Picture a Tuesday morning in March, a locksmith's van parked in the driveway of a house in Sacramento, California. A 60-year-old woman standing on the front porch with a cup of coffee, watching a man she has paid $180 to replace every lock on her home. Front door, back door, side garage entrance, everyone. Her son's belongings are still inside. His girlfriend's belongings too. The considerable number of boxes and bags and items of furniture that had appeared in the woman's home 6 weeks earlier without her permission, without her knowledge, and without anyone asking whether she minded. Nobody had asked whether she minded. That was the whole problem. My name is Barbara Jean Sutter. I am 60 years old. I own the house at 4112 Cloverfield Road in Sacramento outright. Raymond and I paid off the mortgage 4 years before he died, which he called the best feeling of his adult life, and I understood exactly what he meant. Raymond passed away 2 years ago. He was 64. The house has been mine alone since then, mine. That word matters. I want you to hold it. Let me tell you how we got to a Tuesday morning in March with a locksmith in my driveway. My son Kyle is 32 years old. He is a project manager for a construction company, competent at his job, reasonably responsible in most areas of his life, and possessed of a particular blind spot that Raymond and I had noticed since he was about 15. Kyle has always believed, in some deep and unexamined way, that the rules that apply to other people apply to him slightly less, not dramatically, not in a way that was ever truly alarming. He pays his taxes. He shows up when he says he will. He is not a bad person. But there has always been, underneath the surface of his generally decent behavior, a quiet assumption that accommodation would be made for him, that the people who loved him would absorb whatever he needed without requiring him to ask properly or think about the cost to them, Raymond used to say. Kyle is a good boy who has never quite learned that good intentions do not substitute for good behavior. He was right. He usually was. After Raymond died, I was alone in the house for the first time in 32 years. It was hard. I will not minimize that. The house that had been full of sound and life for 3 decades was suddenly very quiet, and the quiet had a weight to it that I was not prepared for. Melissa, my daughter, was in Phoenix with her husband, and I spoke to her several times a week, and she flew out every 2 months and was present in every way she knew how to be. Kyle was 40 minutes away and came over on weekends and helped with things that needed doing. 8 months ago, Kyle called me with a situation. His landlord had sold the building he was renting. The new owner was raising rents significantly. Kyle could not afford to stay at his current place at the new rate, and had not yet found anything comparable in Sacramento's brutal rental market. He asked if he could stay with me temporarily, just a few months. While he got his finances sorted and found a new apartment, I said yes, because he is my son, because Raymond would have said yes, because the house had 4 bedrooms and I was rattling around in it alone, and the company, I told myself, might be good. I told him 2 things when he moved in. 2, simple. Clear first, this arrangement was temporary, 3 months, maybe 4, not open-ended. Second, this was my house. He was a guest. Guests do not make decisions about the house without asking. Kyle said, of course, Mum. Absolutely, he was grateful. He would be out of my hair before I knew it. 8 months later, he was still there. I had let the timeline slip, which was my fault, and I own that. The 3 months became 4, and then 5, and then Kyle kept almost finding an apartment, and the market kept being difficult, and I kept not quite having the conversation that needed to be had. Because the conversation was uncomfortable, and Kyle was my son, and I did not want to be the kind of mother who put her child out. And then, 6 weeks before the Tuesday morning with the locksmith, I came home from my Thursday morning volunteer shift at the hospital to find a woman I had met exactly twice unloading boxes from a U-Haul in my driveway. Her name was Amber Kovacs. She was 28 years old. She was Kyle's girlfriend of 4 months. She was moving into my house. I stood at the end of my driveway with my car keys in my hand and looked at the boxes in the U-Haul and Amber and a friend of hers, who was carrying what appeared to be a clothing rack, toward my front door. I called Kyle. He answered on the second ring. Hey, Mum, he said, cheerful. Kyle, I said. There is a woman moving furniture into my house. A pause. Oh yeah, I was going to talk to you about that. Amber's lease ended and the timing kind of worked out, and I figured since I'm already there. Kyle, it would just make more sense for her to stay here too while we both look for a place. It's temporary, just like me. Kyle, I said. Stop. He stopped. Come home, I said. He came home. We had a conversation in the kitchen, while Amber and her friend waited in the driveway, which I felt terrible about, and which I also understood was not my fault. Kyle explained. In the reasonable tone he used when he wanted something to sound more reasonable than it was, that Amber had nowhere else to go, that it would only be for a little while, that she was very neat and would not be any trouble. I told him that the decision about who lived in my house was mine to make, and that he had not asked me, and that this was not acceptable. Kyle said he was sorry. He said he should have called first. He said Amber was already here now, and could she please just stay, just temporarily. He would definitely ask next time. I looked at my son. I thought about Raymond saying, "Good intentions do not substitute for good behavior." 2 weeks, I said. Amber can stay 2 weeks while you both find somewhere else. In 2 weeks I need a plan from you, a real plan, with dates. Kyle said, "Thank you, Mom, absolutely. 2 weeks, no problem. I want to tell you something about that kitchen conversation. Because I think the detail of it matters. Kyle is 32 years old. He is not a child. He had not been a child for a long time, and yet sitting across from me at that table, explaining why his girlfriend was already in my driveway with a U-Haul, before he had thought to mention it to me. He had the look of a boy who has been caught doing something he knew was wrong, and is hoping that his general good nature will carry him through the consequences. It has worked before. That is the honest thing to say about it. Kyle's general good nature has gotten him through consequences his whole life, because he is genuinely likable, and because Raymond and I loved him, and because it is very hard, when you love someone, to let the consequences land fully when you could absorb them yourself. I had been absorbing Kyle's consequences in small ways for 32 years. I was 60 years old. I was tired of absorbing, not of Kyle. I want to be precise about that. I was not tired of my son. I was tired of the particular dynamic that had developed between us since Raymond died. The dynamic where Kyle needed something and I provided it, and the cost to me was never quite named, because naming it would have made things uncomfortable, and we had all gotten so good at comfortable. Raymond was not here to split the weight with me anymore. That meant I was carrying it alone, and what I had discovered in the 8 months since Kyle moved in was that alone was heavier than I had anticipated. That was 6 weeks ago. The plan never came. Because I think the words matter. I had written, "I want to tell you about the text I sent at 7:52 on Tuesday morning, it the night before, and read it over 3 times. Robert had suggested keeping it factual and without excessive emotion, which was good advice. It said, "Kyle, I am having the locks changed today. This is not a punishment. It is a boundary I should have set months ago and did not. Our belongings and Amber's belongings are all accessible, and nothing has been removed or damaged. When you are ready to have a calm conversation about next steps, please call me. I love you, Mom." I sent it at 7:52. I watched it deliver. I put my phone down and went to make coffee. The locksmith arrived at 8. He was a compact, efficient man named Terry, who did not ask questions and worked quickly. I had told him on the phone that I was changing the locks on my own property, which was true, and he had said all right and given me a price, which was fair. While Terry worked, I thought about Raymond. Raymond had always been the one who held the line when it needed holding. Not harshly. Raymond was not a harsh person, but clearly. He had a gift for making a boundary feel like a fact rather than an argument. He would say, "This is how things are," and mean it, and the children would understand that he meant it. And things would be that way. I had always been the one who explained and extended and found the middle ground. We had balanced each other that way. Without him, I had, for 2 years, been trying to be both things at once and succeeding at neither. Standing on the porch watching Terry work, I felt the particular satisfaction of someone who has finally stopped trying to be 2 people and accepted that being one is enough, if that one is clear about what she needs. My coffee was good. The March morning was cool and bright. Terry finished in 40 minutes. He handed me 4 new keys, front, back, garage, deadbolt, and drove away. I went inside. I made a second cup of coffee and I waited for my phone to ring. Kyle called at 12:17. I know the exact time because I looked at my phone when it rang, and I had been wondering, in the way you wonder about things you know are coming, whether it would be before or after lunch. I was in the garden when it rang. Raymond had planted the rose garden along the back fence the year we paid off the mortgage. A celebration, he called it, a permanent marker, and I tend it the way he taught me. I was deadheading when the phone rang. I let it ring twice, then I answered. "Mom," Kyle said. His voice was careful in the particular way of someone who is very upset and is trying to sound very calm. "I can't get into the house." "I know," I said, a pause. "The locks are changed, yes." "Mom, Kyle, I sent you a text this morning at 7:52. I asked you to read it before you left for work. Did you read it?" A shorter pause. "I saw it come in. I didn't read it. It explained what I was doing and why. And it told you that your belongings are all accessible and undamaged. And it told you to call me when you were ready to have a conversation about next steps. I think you should read it." Silence. I could hear him breathing. "Can you please let me in?" he said. "No," I said. "Not today. I need you to read the text and think about it and call me when you're ready to talk. Your things are fine. Nothing is locked away. Where am I supposed to go tonight?" "That is a problem you have had 8 months and 6 weeks to solve," I said. "I believe in you." I hung up. My hands were not shaking. I had expected them to shake and they did not. I went back to the roses. He called again at 12:45. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 1:15. I let that go too. At 2:30 he texted, "Mom, I read it. Can we talk?" I called him back. We talked for 40 minutes. It was not an easy conversation and I am not going to pretend it was. Kyle was hurt. He was also underneath the hurt, clearly aware on some level that what I had done was not unprovoked, which made the conversation more honest than the ones we had been having. He said it felt extreme. I said, "Kyle, I gave you a 2-week deadline 6 weeks ago. I extended it. I gave you a 30-day notice 3 weeks ago. I told you clearly what I needed. At what point in that sequence did you believe I was not serious?" He did not have an answer for that. He said, "What about Amber?" I said, "Amber is your responsibility. She was never my responsibility, and I say that without any unkindness toward her. She seems like a perfectly nice person who made the mistake of listening to you when you told her my house was available. That is between you and her." A long pause. "Where do you want us to go?" he said. "I want you to find an apartment," I said. "A real one. I will help you. I will look at listings with you tonight if you want. I will help you negotiate. I will help you move. But Kyle, and I need you to hear this, I will not let you live in my house indefinitely without my permission. Not you, and not anyone you invite without asking me. This is my home. Raymond and I built it for 30 years. It is the only thing of his I have left that I can touch." The line was quiet for a moment. "I should have asked before Amber came," he said. "Yes," I said, "you should have. I should have found a place months ago. Yes, I made it your problem when it was mine." "Yes, Kyle, you did." Another silence. Longer. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said. And it was not the sorry of someone trying to get back into the house. It was a different kind, heavier, with more behind it. "I know," I said. "Come get your things whenever you're ready. I'll make sure you can get in." I have thought a great deal about that phone call since. About what it is to hold a line when the person on the other end of it is someone you love. People assume that it must feel powerful, that there is satisfaction in it, some clean vindication of having done the hard thing at last. And there is some of that. I will not pretend there is not, but what I remember most is not satisfaction. What I remember is the quality of Kyle's voice when he said I should have asked before Amber came, the weight of it, the genuine acknowledgement, without hedging, of something he had known on some level all along. Kyle is not a bad person. I have said this before, and I mean it completely. What he is, what he has always been, is someone who slides along the path of least resistance until something stops him. Raymond used to say that Kyle needed friction to find his footing. That was not a criticism. Raymond loved Kyle as completely as I do. It was an observation about how his son was built, the same way he would observe that a particular kind of wood needed a specific tool to work properly. The locksmith was friction. It was the most expensive $180 I have ever spent, and also I think the most valuable, Melissa called that evening. Kyle had called her first, which I had anticipated, and she had called me to hear my side, which I appreciated. She listened without interrupting, the way she always does. Melissa is the one who thinks before she speaks, always has been. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Did you really stand on the porch and watch the locksmith?" she said. I had my coffee, I said. A pause. Then Melissa laughed, a real laugh surprised out of her, and said, Mom, good for you. Your father would have said it was overdue, I said. Yeah, she said. He really would have.
I called Melissa the night Amber arrived with the U-Haul. Melissa is 35 and lives in Phoenix with her husband and their kids. She and Kyle are close in the way that siblings are close when they have survived something together. In their case, Raymond's illness and death, 2 years of watching their father decline and then be gone. She knows Kyle better than most people do, and she knows me better than most, and she does not soften things when I need to hear them straight. I told her what had happened. She listened all the way through, then she said, Mom, how long are you going to let this go on? I told her I had given them 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, she said I told her we would see. Mom, her voice had a particular quality, patient and firm at the same time. That reminded me of Raymond when he was trying to make me understand something I was resisting. You need to decide what you are willing to do if the 2 weeks come and go and nothing changes. Because Kyle will do exactly as much as he is allowed to do. He has always been like that. It is not a character flaw, it is just who he is. He needs a wall to bump into before he turns. I told her she was probably right. I am definitely right, she said. The question is whether you are going to build the wall. I want to be precise about the 6 weeks, because I think precision matters when you are trying to explain a decision that some people will call extreme. Week 1. Amber settled in. She was, as Kyle had promised, reasonably neat. She cooked sometimes and left the kitchen clean. She said good morning when we passed in the hallway. I told myself this was manageable. I told myself 2 weeks, week 2. I asked Kyle about the plan. He said he was looking. He showed me an apartment listing on his phone. It was $400 more per month than he wanted to pay. I said that is the market, Kyle. He said he would keep looking at the end of week 2. I sat down with both of them at the kitchen table, the table Raymond had built himself one long weekend in 2003, because he wanted a table big enough for a large family at holidays, and I said, 2 weeks is up. What is the plan? Kyle said they needed more time. Amber said the market was really hard. They were both very sorry. I gave them 2 more weeks. This was my second mistake. My first mistake was not having the conversation when Kyle's 3 months became 5. My second mistake was extending the deadline a second time, instead of holding the line I had drawn. I called my friend Diane after that kitchen table conversation. Diane has lived next door for 18 years and is the kind of friend who does not tell you what you want to hear, which is the only kind of friend worth having after a certain age. Barbara, Diane said. How many times are you going to move the goalpost? I told her I was giving them 2 more weeks. And then what? She said. I did not have a good answer. That was the problem. I had been drawing lines and then stepping over them myself, which meant the lines were not lines at all. They were suggestions, and Kyle had always been very good at treating suggestions as optional. Week 3. Amber began rearranging things. I came downstairs on a Wednesday morning to find that the photographs on the living room shelf, Raymond and me on our anniversary trip to Napa, Kyle and Melissa as children at the beach, family portrait from the year before Raymond got sick, had been moved, not removed, shifted along the shelf to make room for a succulent plant in a ceramic pot that Amber had apparently decided the shelf needed. I moved the photographs back. I said nothing. Week 4. Amber's friend Greta came to stay for the weekend. Nobody asked. I came home Friday evening to a stranger at my kitchen table eating dinner. Greta was pleasant and apologetic and left Sunday afternoon, but the point was not Greta. The point was that my house was being treated as a place where other people's decisions were made. I called Robert Liang that Monday morning. Robert is my attorney. He handled Raymond's estate, a careful and methodical man who rarely wastes words. I told him the situation. What are your rights here? I asked. He explained them. Kyle had no legal tenancy. He had moved in as a family member with no formal agreement, no rent paid, no written lease. Amber had even less. As the property owner, I had the right to ask them both to leave. The appropriate notice period in California for a house guest with no lease was, he said, somewhat legally ambiguous, but a written notice giving 30 days was both legally defensible and, in his opinion, more than generous given the circumstances. If they don't leave after 30 days? I asked. Then it becomes a formal eviction, he said. which you would win, but it takes time and it is unpleasant. I thanked Robert and sat with the information for 2 days, week 5. Conversation I should have had in week 2. I sat down with Kyle alone. Amber was out, and I told him clearly, without hedging, that the situation was not working, that my home was not a long-term solution for him and Amber. That I needed them to be out within 30 days. Kyle's face did something complicated. First surprise, then the beginning of an argument, then, because Kyle is underneath everything, not a cruel person, something that looked like genuine shame. Mom, he said, 30 days isn't very long. 8 months and 6 weeks is very long, I said. 30 days is what's left. He said he understood. He said he would make it work. He said he was sorry. Week 6, nothing changed. Amber did not start packing. Kyle did not show me apartment listings. The succulent remained on the shelf, beside my rearranged photographs. Greta came back for another weekend without anyone asking. I watched all of this and I understood, with a clarity that had taken me too long to arrive at, that the conversation and the deadline had not worked because there was no consequence behind them. I had drawn lines, I had extended lines, I had explained lines. What I had never done was enforce one. On a Sunday evening I called Diane. I'm done talking, I said. Diane was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? She said. I told her. Another pause. Then, it is about time, Barbara. I called Robert the next morning and asked whether a locksmith on Tuesday while Kyle was at work was legally defensible given everything. Robert said yes, given the lack of any formal tenancy and the clear conversations I had documented, and suggested I also send a written notice by text that same morning so there was a timestamp. I said I would. Monday evening I went through the house and made sure that everything of Kyle's and Amber's that could not be replaced was accessible. Near the front, nothing locked away. I was removing them from my home. I was not trying to harm them or take their property. I was enforcing this one thing I should have enforced 6 weeks ago. I called the locksmith. Tuesday morning, 8 a.m., he arrived. I stood on my front porch with my coffee, and I watched him work, and I felt for the first time in 6 weeks entirely like myself.
Kyle and Amber were out within 10 days. I want to say that clearly because I think it matters. Once the situation was real, once there was an actual locked door and an actual consequence, things moved. They found a 2-bedroom apartment in Elk Grove, 20 minutes from Sacramento, at a price Kyle described as painful but manageable. Amber's name is on the lease too. They moved out on a Saturday with a rental truck and 3 trips. And I helped them pack the kitchen boxes because Kyle's back has been difficult since a work injury 2 years ago, and because I am his mother, and that does not stop because I changed the locks. Kyle hugged me at the door when they left. A real hug, the kind that has something in it beyond habit. I'm sorry it took a locksmith, he said. I'm sorry it took a locksmith too, I said. But here we are. He laughed a little. Yeah, he said, here we are. Amber shook my hand at the door, which I found unexpectedly touching. She said, Mrs. Sutter, I apologize for not handling this better. I should have insisted Kyle talk to you before I moved in. I knew it wasn't right, and I did it anyway because it was easy, and that was wrong. I told her I appreciated that and I meant it. Whatever else Amber is, she is honest when honesty costs her something, and that is not nothing. The house has been mine again for 6 weeks now. I want to describe what that is like, because I think people who have not lost the full ownership of their own space temporarily, even partially, may not understand what its return feels like. It is not just quiet. It is a particular kind of quiet. The kind that has your own rhythm in it, rather than someone else's. The kind where you know every sound the house makes at night, and none of them surprise you. Where you open the refrigerator and everything in it is something you put there. Where you can walk to the kitchen at midnight without calculating whether anyone else is awake. I moved Raymond's photographs back to their exact positions on the shelf. I put Amber's succulent on the back porch. It is a nice plant and I have been watering it, and it is doing well. And I thought about whether to text her and offer it back and decided I would mention it the next time I saw her. Because there will be a next time. I want to be clear about that. Kyle comes for dinner on Sundays now. He has missed 2 in the 6 weeks since he moved out, which means he has been here 4 times. Which is 4 more Sunday dinners than he had in the 8 months he lived here. There is something about not living with someone that makes you actually visit them.
He comes at 5, we eat at 6. He stays until 8 or so, and then drives back to Elk Grove. Amber came twice. She is learning, I think, how to be in my house as a guest rather than as a resident, and she is making a genuine effort at it. She brought wine the second time. She asked before she opened a cabinet. I appreciated both things more than I let on. Deanne came over the Saturday after Kyle moved out, with a bottle of wine and the particular energy of a person who has been waiting to celebrate something. I told you, she said, sitting at Raymond's kitchen table. You told me, I agreed. I told you in week 2, you did. I told you the locksmith was the only language that was going to work, Diane, I said. You can stop now. She grinned. I just want it on the record. It is very much on the record, I said. We drank the wine and talked about Raymond for a while, the way Diane and I sometimes do. She knew him almost as long as I did. 18 years of neighbourhood barbecues and borrowed ladders and the particular friendship of people whose houses are 30 feet apart. She talked about the time Raymond had tried to fix her gutters and made them slightly worse, and was so mortified by this that he had come back 3 weekends in a row to get them right. He was so stubborn about the things he wanted to do well, she said. He was, I said. It was infuriating and wonderful in equal measure. Kyle has some of that, she said. I thought about, yes, I said. He does. He just needed to point it in the right direction. Dr. Chen asked me about it at my November checkup. My doctor of 11 years who has the particular gift of treating a whole person rather than just a set of symptoms. How are things at home, she said. In the way she says it, that means she actually wants to know. I told her the short version. She listened and then said, It sounds like you took care of yourself. I told her it had taken longer than it should have. It usually does, she said. Especially for people who are good at taking care of others first. It takes longer to remember that you are also someone who deserves to be taken care of. I thought about that for a long time, after the appointment. Raymond used to say that I gave away too much of myself and called it love. He did not mean it as criticism. He meant it as observation, the way engineers observe things, factually, without judgment. Because the fact is what tells you where the structure needs reinforcing. He was right. He usually was about the structural things. What I had given away in those 8 months was not money or time or labour, though it was all of those things too. What I had given away was the clarity of my own home, the sense of it as mine, ordered according to my preferences, entered and exited by people who had asked to be there. That clarity is not a small thing when you are 60 years old and living alone, and the person who shared the house with you for 30 years is gone. It is, in fact, a very large thing. I have it back now. The house at 4112 Cloverfield Road is mine. Every light switch, every cabinet, every sound it makes at night. Mine in the way it was before, and mine in a way I understand better now than I did before. Because I know what it cost to lose it and what it takes to get it back. Raymond painted this house himself the summer Kyle was 10 and Melissa was 13. 2 coats, a Saturday and a Sunday. The children pressed into service, holding the ladder and handing up paint and complaining in the theatrical way of children who know they are not really going to get out of it. He chose the colour, a warm grey that I had been sceptical of and that turned out to be exactly right, and stood back at the end of the second day and looked at it with the satisfaction of someone who has done something with his hands that will last. It is still that colour. It is still exactly right. I have thought, in the 6 weeks since the locksmith, about what I would tell a woman in my position, the position I was in 8 months ago. When Kyle first moved in and the arrangement felt manageable and the timeline felt clear, I would tell her, draw your lines in ink, not pencil. Say what you mean and mean what you say, and when the deadline arrives, hold it. Not because your children are bad people. Not because love requires you to be hard. But because the lines you draw are also the lines that tell the people you love who you are and what you expect from them. Kyle did not know, really know, that I was serious until Tuesday morning in March, when he put his key in my front door and nothing happened. I wish it had not taken that. I wish the conversations had been enough. But I have learned. Raymond tried to teach me this, and I learned it slowly, that some people only understand a thing when it has edges, when it is real and solid and cannot be talked around. The locked door was real. Kyle understood it. And now, On Sunday evenings, he sits at his father's kitchen table, and we eat dinner together and talk about his week and his apartment and the job and whatever else comes up. Last Sunday, he asked me to show him how to do Raymond's rose pruning method. Raymond had a specific technique, angle and timing that Kyle had watched as a kid but never learned. We spent an hour in the garden. I showed him where to cut and at what angle and why it matters. He asked questions. He was careful and attentive in the way that Kyle is when he is actually paying attention rather than performing attention. Before he left, he said, "Mom, I want to ask you something." I said, "Go ahead. Can Amber and I come for Thanksgiving, if you're doing it here?" I looked at my son, 32 years old, Raymond's jawline, the same way of standing when he is hoping for something that I have known since he was 4. "Yes," I said. "You can come for Thanksgiving. You may want to call first." He smiled. "Yeah," he said. "I know, I will." He drove away. I stood on the front porch for a moment, the same porch where I had stood with my coffee on a Tuesday morning in March and watched a locksmith earn his $180. And I looked at the neighborhood in the Sunday evening light. Raymond built a good life here. I intend to keep it exactly that. Melissa flew out for Thanksgiving. She helped me make the turkey the way Raymond always did, brined overnight, roasted slow. The whole production that Raymond had refined over 20 years, until it was exactly right, and that I had been making alone for the 2 years since he died. Kyle and Amber came. They arrived on time, which I noted. They brought wine and a pie. Amber asked what she could help with and meant it, and I put her to work on the potatoes, which she did well. We ate at Raymond's kitchen table. 5 people, which was the most it had held since Raymond died. I'd been slightly worried about how it would feel. Too many people, too much noise, the wrong kind of full, and it did not feel that way at all. It felt like a house that was being used correctly. After dinner, Kyle helped me with the dishes without being asked. We stood at the sink together the way we used to, when he was growing up, him washing and me drying. Though now he is taller than me by several inches, and it is slightly different and also exactly the same. "Mom," he said at one point. I said. "I think about Dad a lot in this kitchen." "So do I said. We were quiet for a while. The dishes got done. Before he left, he stopped on the porch, the same porch where I had stood with my coffee in March and looked out at the yard. "He planted those roses the year I turned 10, Kyle said. "He did," I said. I remember being so annoyed that he made me help dig the holes. "You were not very enthusiastic," I agreed. Kyle was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad they're still here," he said. "Me too," I said. He drove away. I stood on the porch for a while in the November night. The rose canes were bare for winter, but the structure was there. Raymond's careful planting, the spacing he had worked out with his engineer's precision. They will bloom again in spring. They always do. Diane came to Thanksgiving too, at the last minute, because her son had the flu and she was going to be alone, and I called her at 11 in the morning and said, "Get over here." She arrived with a bottle of wine she had been saving for a special occasion, and which turned out to be excellent. And she sat at Raymond's table and talked about him with the ease of someone who knew him for 18 years and is not afraid of the grief that comes with his name. At one point she looked around the table. Kyle, Amber, Melissa, me, herself, and said, "Raymond would have been holding court right now. You know, he would have been telling that story about the Napa trip. He told that story every Thanksgiving." Melissa said. "It was a good story," I said. "It was the same story," Kyle said. But he was smiling. I looked at my children. 32 and 35, Raymond's jaw on both of them, his particular way of tilting their heads when something amuses them. I thought, this is what a house is for, not the square footage, not the market value, not whose name is on the deed, though the name on my deed is mine, and I'm very clear about that now. The house is for this. 5 people at a table that Raymond built, eating food that Raymond taught me to make. Remembering a man who filled every room he was in with the specific warmth of someone who was genuinely glad to be there. He was glad to be there every single day. I am working on being the same. I want to say one more thing directly to anyone listening who is in the position I was in 8 months ago. The position of someone who has said yes to something out of love, and then watched the yes expand past every boundary they thought they had drawn. Here is what I wish someone had told me earlier. Saying no is not a failure of love. It is, sometimes, the most honest form of it. When I told Kyle he needed to leave, I was not abandoning him. I was telling him the truth about what I needed. I was treating him like an adult who could handle the truth, which is a form of respect that is often harder to give than accommodation. He could handle it. I had doubted that for 8 months, and it turned out I was wrong. Kyle, when given a real wall and no way around it, found a real solution. He signed a lease. He pays his rent. He comes for Sunday dinners. He is, in the ways that matter, exactly the son Raymond and I raised him to be. He just needed to bump into something solid first. Raymond was right about that. He was right about most things structural. The house at 4112 Cloverfield Road is quiet tonight. A Tuesday in December, cold by Sacramento standards, which is to say brisk and still and full of stars, in a way that the summers are not. I have the heat set to the temperature I like. The tea I am making is the kind I like. The book on the chair is one I chose. Every inch of this house is mine, in the way it was always meant to be. I am working on being as glad about that as Raymond would want me to be. I think I am getting there. I am 60 years old, I am home, and next time someone wants to move in, they are going to ask me first.